Welcome to the shir, which is the title of this week is the Neshama Yasera, the additional soul of Shabbos. The Gemara in Beitza, page 16a and Tanis 27b states that every Jew has a Neshama Yasera, an additional soul on Shabbos. Seemingly, this would imply that we have like an extra injection of energy on Shabbos. You know, somehow when Shabbos comes and we're tired and we sort of rest in the chair, it doesn't seem as if we have this extra vitality, as if we've taken a number of vitamins and we're ready to go running around the block. And yet, the Gemara says that we have this additional neshama. What does that mean? So, not necessarily does it mean we have extra vitality in the body, but what it means is that the neshama, the soul, has many layers and levels to it. In fact, there are 5 names to the neshama, which are 5 levels in the neshama. And when we say that we have a neshama yasera on Shabbos, we explained in the previous classes that what this meant was that the chayas, the energy, the flow of divine energy to the world is on Shabbos from a higher level. And we explained that it's coming from the level of the world of Beriah, the world of thought, supernal thought, so that on Shabbos, we connect with a higher level and a deeper sensitivity within our neshama. And that's what it means, a neshama yasera, an additional neshama. So in this class, we're going to have a look deeper at the neshama yasera and the meaning of the additional soul which we have on Shabbos and how it is felt and how we can perhaps prepare for its revelation. So let's start by having a look at a comment of the Zohar. The Zohar says, Shas Tzelusa, Shas Karava. The time of davening, of prayer, is a time of battle. Now, in general, we don't think of davening as a time of battling. Prayer, in its classical sense, is request. The Siddur is our best friend. If we need something, we ask Hashem for it. Chassidus explains a little deeper. There are, in fact, in davening, 2 ingredients of tefillah, of prayer. The first is hiskashrus hanashama, connecting the soul. When we daven, our soul connects to Hashem. It yearns, it cleaves. That's one aspect of tefillah. The second aspect of tefillah is the birur v'zichur haguf, This is the refining and elevation of the body, the animal soul. Now, how do those two simultaneously work in prayer? Seemingly, we've got within us the godly soul that wants to connect and the animal soul that wants to wallow in the animal, and yet how do we refine it during prayer? Well, what the godly soul has to do is to yearn, to connect, and simultaneously communicate. It needs to engage the animal soul, the nefesh habahamis, with conversation, with dialogue. And it needs to talk to the animal soul, and it needs to explain to the animal soul the tov hashnayim mino echad. Better two than one. Let's ride in tandem. Don't you go off and wallow in the vanities of the world and immerse yourself in the quagmire of tivus, of desires and addictions, but come with me. Let's work together. And when the godly soul focuses on a concept, and that concept, it meditates on the concept, it attaches to the concept, and it explains that concept to the animal soul, then what happens, that focus, that meditation brings to love. Let's specifically have a look at this in the context of the Shema. We know that there's a mitzvah to believe in Hashem. It says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, the first of the 10 commandments is the belief in God. Quite separately, there's a mitzvah of Yichud Hashem, to believe in the unity of God. And that's the verse, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. It's a mitzvah to recite the Shema twice daily. What should we have in mind when we say the Shema? Shema Yisrael, listen, hear, understand. Hashem, who is our God, Hashem Echad, Hashem is one. It says in Shulchan Aruch, in the Code of Jewish Law, that the word Echad, which means one, is comprised of 3 letters, an Aleph, a Ches, and a Dalet. Numerically, Dalet is number 4, Ches is number 8, Aleph is number 1. Dalet refers to the 4 directions, north, south, east, and west. God is in all directions. Ches is the 7 firmaments of heaven and the earth. The rabbis talk about the 7 firmaments. These are descriptions of higher heavens. These 7 firmaments and earth and all the 4 directions are part of Aleph, Alufo Shalolim. The Aluf, the word Aluf means a commander. Alufo Shalolim means the commander-in-chief of the world. In other words, all the world, its 4 directions, the 7 firmaments, the entire cosmos is part of one being. Now, the mitzvah of Achdus Hashem is not only a mere statement of our belief in monotheism. It's not just stating that there is one God and not 2 gods. Rather, the mitzvah of Achdus Hashem, as explained in Chassidus, is a statement that there's nothing else besides God. How does that square with the fact that there is a world? The answer is that the world, in the lens of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings, is a mere manifestation of divine creativity. God pumps ex nihilo, something from nothing, divine creative energy into the world so that it should exist. And if God was to withdraw that divine creative energy for a single second, the world would cease to exist. So there's what's called a koyach hapoyel benifel. There's the power which is invested by God into creation. And if he was to withdraw that power, it would cease to exist. We've spoken about this numerous times. Einstein taught us there's this relationship between energy and mass. And in Chassidus, we would call it divine creative energy that makes that mass. So when we say Shema Yisrael, we meditate on the fact that although in our vision we see the world, nevertheless, that world which we are looking at in truth is a manifestation of Hashem's creative power. And therefore, ein od milvado, there's nothing else beside Hashem. That includes also the darker side of ourselves. In other words, we have a Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination. Chassidus delineates and tells us that we have, in Tanya, we have a godly soul and an animal soul, a nefesh elikis and nefesh bahamis. We explained in a previous class that the Yetzer Tov, the good inclination, is a reference to the intellect of the godly soul, and the nefesh and the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is a reference to the emotional part of the animal soul. But what we meditate upon in the Shema is that both the godly soul and the animal soul and the body and the world around us is all created by Hashem. They're all creations. It's just that the godly soul is overtly connected and the animal soul is overtly opaque. It's more of a concealment than the godly soul. The godly soul is a spark of the divine which has come into a created state. The Alter Rebbe describes it in Tanya as a chelek halakah mimal, a veritable portion of God. How you can divide something which is indivisible is discussed at length in Chassidus, but the idea is it's a created spark of godliness, and it feels godliness. And in davening, it yearns, it reconnects. However, the animal soul, it conceals godliness. During davening, during prayer, one connects the godly soul, and the godly soul engages in dialogue, communication with the animal soul, and it tells it that the purpose of the descent of the godly soul is to create a dwelling place for the divine in this world, which means it needs to embrace the animal and it needs to embrace the earthly and infuse it and elevate it with divine purpose, direction, and compass. Now, that is really hard work. And this is what we mean when we say, Sheishes Yamin Tavod. You have to work 6 days a week. Of course, it means provision. You have to work, you have to find a job, and you have to provide pounds and pence, dollars and cents to put food on the table. But that's the physical work, physical labor. Parallel to that, there needs to be spiritual labor. A person has to work spiritually hard to provide in the 6 days of the week. Sheishes Yamim Tavod. And as we explained in the previous class, that there are 39 prohibited melachos, categories of work on Shabbos. And those are the categories of work which are mentioned in the construction of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. So the construction of the tabernacle was only permitted during the weekday. It was prohibited on Shabbos. Those 39 categories of work were categories which were engaged with during the weekday. And just as there are 39 melachos, 39 categories of work, in the physical sense, there are also 39 categories of work in the spiritual sense. So, for example, Let's take the first category, hachoirish, plowing. Plowing in the physical sense is that you weaken the ground, you churn it over, you prepare it for planting. In the spiritual sense, if a person is hard and they're not ready for any spiritual growth, then they need plowing. That plowing is the element of having a leiv nishbar, a broken heart, because brokenheartedness is a quality in spirituality. It doesn't mean that a person is depressed or suffers from lack of self-esteem. Rather, it means that the person isn't arrogant, the person isn't haughty, they are humble, they are prepared to grow, prepared to listen, prepared to learn. And that is a malacha, a spiritual malacha of chayrish. Then there's the spiritual malacha of zayreya, of planting. In the physical sense, we put a seed in the ground and we cover it with earth and it will grow. Similarly, there's the concept of planting in the spiritual sense. And so it is with all the 39 malachos, the 39 categories of work. So, for example, boire. Boire means selecting. On Shabbos, boire is prohibited. So, for example, if you have a mixture of wanted materials and materials that are not wanted, on Shabbos, you may not remove that which is not wanted from that which is wanted. Rather, you have to take that which is wanted away from the unwanted, and you have to do it with your hand and not with a utensil, and you have to do it immediately before you need it. There are laws, practical halachos of boire, of selection. So during the weekday, a person has to sift and select within themselves that which is positive and good, and has to reject that which is negative and bad. It's often difficult to look within the mirror and plumb the depths of one's soul and psyche and sift and find the dregs, that which is the unwanted, and reject it, and to take that which is good. Often one needs to ask a friend. Often an impulse comes. How do you know if it's coming from the Yetzer Tov or the Yetzer Hara? You need to divide between the two. You need to know. Usually a good indicator is, what is the toitzah? What is going to lead to? So, for example, if you have a certain impulse and you ask, where is it going to lead to? So if you're in bed in the morning and it's freezing cold and you have a thought, oh, it's too cold to get up. I don't need to go to shul. Too cold to get out of bed. Well, what is the toitzah? What is the result? You're going to lie in bed. You're going to miss the minyan. Then it's not coming from the Yetzer Tov. It's not coming from the godly soul. Often, Chassidim would ask themselves, what would the Rebbe want me to do in this situation? And then, of course, it becomes less subjective and more objective, and an objective person, especially a Rebbe, who is a person who reflects the divine will. When a chassid asks himself, what would the Rebbe want me to do in this situation? There's a certain clarity which is produced from that question. So that's the malacha of boire. All these malachos, all this work takes place during the 6 days of creation. Sheishes Yom Tavid. On Shabbos, it's prohibited. So the meditation of Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and the juxtaposition of Ve'ahavto es Hashem Elokecha is closely related. When a person meditates on Ein Od Milvado and delves deeply into the bitul, the nullification of the creation, and how it stems, Baruch Shem Kibod Malchus Elolam Boed, the whole of creation is a mere ray of God's creative energy, and is an infinitesimally small fraction of his power invested in the world in comparison to the Ein Sof, to the infinite. When a person goes through all those steps of meditation, then a person realizes, I should be interested in pizza. I should be interested in all the vanities of the world. I only have one desire, and that is to attach to you, Hashem. That's work. That's Yegias Nefesh. That takes tremendous focus and investment. It's interesting. The Shema Yisrael, if we have a look, going back into history, this was actually a conversation that took place between Yaakov Avinu and his sons. When Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, our patriarch, was on his deathbed, his sons, the tribes of Israel, came to visit him. And there in the depravity of Egypt, which was sunken in polytheistic culture, he was worried. Is his monotheistic tradition started by his grandfather Abraham and his father Yitzchak and continued by himself? Is it going to continue in his children? And he was anxious. And his children said, Shema Yisrael, here, our father Israel, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. We believe full-heartedly in the concept of monotheism. And Yaakov responded, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusa Le'olam Va'ed. Like, so to speak, saying, oh, Baruch Hashem. There's a deeper understanding over here. The level of soul of Yaakov Avinu and his children, they were rooted in different places. Yaakov Avinu, Jacob our patriarch, was a neshama, a soul of the world of Atzilus. A soul of the world of Atzilus is completely bottled, completely nullified to God. So much so that it's even on earth a merkava, a chariot to the divine will. And it says that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the patriarchs, were chariots. They were like a merkava to the divine will. Their sons, the souls of the Shavatim, of the tribes, they stemmed from the world of Bria. The world of Bria is a step down from the world of Atzilus. And the world of Bria, as it suggests, is a created, independent being, although in the level of Bria, a being which is nullified to its source. It's called a yesh mishe ohev. It's something that loves. In Atzilus, there's nothing else but godliness. In Bria, there's something that does exist, but that existence cleaves to Hashem. So when they said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, when the sons of Yaakov, who were not of his soul level, said to him, we believe in Hashem Echad. In other words, we appreciate and understand the concept of Achdus Hashem, of Einod Milvadoi. So Yaakov said, Baruch, may there be infused, from the word bracha v'hamshacha, be brought down. Shem kavod malchusai. Shem kavod malchusai are a reference to the worlds of Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. La'olam, into the Helam, into the concealment, may there be drawn va'ed, with chilufe asban, with a interchange of letters, is the same as the word echad. In other words, the oneness of Hashem should be brought down into your worlds. That's what Yaakov said to them. He was delighted because through their hard work and meditation, they would be able to draw down the level of Atzilus down into the worlds of Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. But that would take a lot of hard work. That is the Avodah. That is the Sheishes Yomim Ta'avoid of the weekday. It involves tremendous hard work. In contrast, on Shabbos, we stop working. The tefillah, the prayer of Shabbos, is very different to the tefillah of the weekday. The tefillah of a weekday is a battle. We have to engage in that refining process. On Shabbos, there's a level of oineg, of withdrawal. And on Shabbos, as we explained in the previous class, just like a person who is creating something, like an artist who makes a painting, whilst they are painting, their entire mind, intellect, emotions, the whole lot is invested into the painting. But when they finish, they sit back and take great delight in their creation. Similarly, on Shabbos, Shavas vayinofash, Hashem rested. It doesn't mean to say, as we explained in the last class, that he stopped creating the world, because if Hashem would stop creating the world would cease to exist. What it means is that the energy from creation came from a higher level. It came from the level of machshava, of thought, rather than from asiyah, from deed. So we see that in Avodah Hashem, in the service Hashem, there are two modes. There's the weekday mode, which is the mode of battle, the mode of engaging with the animal, refining meditation, which brings love, tremendous focus and exertion needed. On Shabbos, there's a mode of menucha, of tranquility, of sitting back, of tainug, and of pleasure. And it is on Shabbos that we receive from above this higher level of neshama yasera, of the additional higher element of our own soul, which is revealed on Shabbos as a gift to us. Let's explain a little bit deeper. In the nefesh, in the soul, we have an element called Rotzoin, willpower, desire to do something. Now, Rotzoin is the mover and shaker, because if you want to do something, really want to do something, you'll get it done. Ein dover omed bifnei Rotzoin. Nothing stands in the way of will. If you really want to do it, you'll do it. The question is, how do you generate the will? How do you generate the Rotzoin? It's interesting that love in Hebrew is called ahava. The shoresh, the root of the word ahava, is the word ava. Ava means to want, to desire. Because the inner dimension of loving is wanting, is the will for it. So Chassidus explains that there is two distinct levels in Rotzoin itself. There's what's called Rotzoin Elyon and Rotzoin Tachton, the upper Rotzoin and the lower Rotzoin. What is the difference between the two? Rotzoin Tachton, the lower Rotzoin, is a Rotzoin which is generated by intellect. When a person understands the utility of something and they think about it, and through understanding why they should want it, they generate a Rotzoin. That's called a Rotzoin Tachton, a lower Rotzoin. Why is it called the lower Rotzoin? Because it stands lower than Chachma, than wisdom. It was the wisdom, it was the intellect, it was the Seichel that generated the Rotzoin. But then there is something called the Rotzoin Elyon, a higher level of Rotzoin. For example, the will to live. Does anybody need to explain the will to live? It's not something which needs any intellect. It's a natural will and desire of a person, the will to live. It stands higher than Chochmah. And that's why it's called a Rotzoin Elyon. Now, these two levels of Rotzoin give birth to two levels of love, because we said that the inner dimension of loving is wanting. The Rotzoin Tachtoin is a love that's created through meditation. So, Ve'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavecha. This is called Rotzoin Tachtoin, the lower Rotzoin, which is created through meditation. As the Maggid says, what does it mean, Ve'ahavta? How can you command an emotion and you shall love? How can you command a person to have an emotion? Says the Maggid, what it means is that a person should meditate. That's the command, to learn chassidus and meditate, and that will generate the love. So that's the love which is generated through the seichel. That's called the Rotzoin Tachton, and that is the Avodah of the weekday. On Shabbos, what we have revealed as a gift to us is the Rotzoin Elyon. It's interesting, in the Kiddush on Friday nights, we say, V'rotza banu. Hashem has wanted us, has desired us. In other words, he's invested and revealed within us a Rotzoin Elyon. Because on Shabbos, what Hashem gives us as a gift is a revelation of a higher level in our soul, that which transcends the intellect, that which comes from the very essence of the soul, and that becomes revealed on Shabbos. It's interesting that there's a verse in Yechezkel in chapter 46, verse 1, which says the following: Thus said the Lord Hashem Elokim, the gates of the inner courtyard that faces eastward shall be closed during the 6 days of labor, but on Shabbos it shall be opened. The Zohar, Tikkunei Zohar, explains that the opening and closing of this gate mentioned in Yechezkel is a reference to the revelation of the Neshama Yesera of the additional soul on Shabbos. So what does it mean, the opening and the closing? It means that during the 6 days of the week, the gate is closed. Why? Because Sheishes Yamin Tavoid, because these are the days of Bereshis. It says with 10 utterances the world was created. One of those 10 utterances is the word Bereshis. Bereshis is a reference to Chochmah, because Kulam b'Chochmah Sisa, Hashem made everything with Chochmah, and that is considered one of the 10 utterances. And Sheishis Yom Tavod, Bereshis bara Elokim, Hashem created during the 6 days of creation with Chochmah. In other words, there was an investment of Chochmah, of Seichel and Midas and emotions into creation, which came out through the 10 utterances. On Shabbos, Hashem rests. And the gate, which is Hashar Hapoina Kodim, Kodim is a reference to Kadmoina Shalolam, that which preceded the world, is opened, because on Shabbos there's an elevation to that which is higher than Chochmah. That's the level of Tainug, or what we just explained, called the Rotzoin Ha'elyon, the higher Rotzoin, which is felt inside the person on Shabbos as the Neshama Yesera. So to summarize, we can say that there's what's called the Avodah of the weekday, Sheishis Yomim Taveh, the tremendous struggle, battle of prayer in which we have to engage in the 39 melachos in order to refine ourselves and to generate love through intellect and meditation. Ve'ohavta, and you should meditate, which should bring to love. And then there's the Avodah of Shabbos, which is Menucha and Tainug. You sit back, and as a gift, you have the Neshama Yesera, the additional level of soul, which is the deeper recesses of one's soul becoming revealed. But there's a caveat. The caveat is that in order for the Rotzoin Elyon, the Neshama Yeseda, the additional soul, to be revealed within the person, it needs a vessel. What is the vessel of its revelation? It is the Rotzoin HaTachton. It is the hard work of the week. Misha Torach be'erev Shabbos yochel b'Shabbos. Somebody who works on Friday will eat on Shabbos, meaning that the weekday prayers are all a preparation for Shabbos. Somebody who works hard spiritually during the week will have the reward of having the revelation of the Neshama Yesera on Shabbos. If a person doesn't work hard, the Neshama Yesera, that higher level of the soul, may illuminate, but it will do so in a makif, in a peripheral way. It won't be united within and integrated within the person. If a person, however, works during the week, what happens is there's a fusion between the will, and love, which is generated through meditation, and the will and love, which is a gift from above. Those two come together in a very powerful way so that the deeper level of a person's soul shine within the vessel of the hard work of theirs during the week. We can therefore see it in terms of Jacob's ladder, of a sulam. There are Malachei Elokim going up and Malachei Elokim going down. There are angels going up, angels going down. What does this mean? You can see Shabbos as the vortex of the week. Somebody who prepares for Shabbos spiritually will have the reward of their Neshama Yesera, the higher dimension of their soul, shining in them on Shabbos. In turn, that will bless the coming week. Shabbos, says the Zohar, Minei Misbarchen Kula Yomin. Shabbos blesses all the days of the coming week. A ray of the Neshama Yesera, of the additional soul, shines in the coming week, in the davening of the coming week, from the achievements of the previous week. In other words, if in 1 week a person worked hard and achieved a revelation of the Neshama Yesera, the additional soul on Shabbos, that will shine also in the coming week's davening. In other words, Shabbos will bless the coming week, that in their hard work of Avodah in this coming week, they will have this additional sensitivity and revelation because of the Avodah, because of the hard of what was achieved in the previous Shabbos. So Shabbos becomes the vortex. The whole week prepares for Shabbos, and Shabbos blesses the whole week. We can now explain with this a beautiful teaching in Hayom Yom. This is the entry of the 23rd and the 24th of Kislev. The Rebbe writes in Hayom Yom, something taken from the Frierdiker Rebbe's Zayder's talks of 1875, and he says the following. The 3 days before Shabbos are a preparation for Shabbos. The Zohar says about Shabbos that from it all days are blessed. All days refer to the 6 days of the week on which God conferred a general blessing that God will bless you in everything that you will do. Now, in parentheses, we usually take that to mean that a person has to work hard, and of course, the blessing of God makes a person rich, but you can't sit at home idle. You have to actually engage in work in order to produce something, but Hashem will give you a blessing in everything you will do. We usually understand it in the physical sense. Here, we also need to understand it in the spiritual sense, that the bracha of Shabbos will be everything that we will do in our spiritual work. The blessing of Shabbos is for the days preceding it and the days following it. The preparations for Shabbos begin on Wednesday and are announced by the brief L'chuna Ranana of 3 verses. That means in the Shir Shal Yom, in the Song of the Day, for Wednesday, right at the end, it says L'chuna Ranana. Now, L'chuna Ranana, as we know, is the introduction of the prayers of Kabbalah Shabbos, of the inauguration of the Shabbos. So the little L'chuna Ranana starts on Wednesday because the preparations begin then. And the Rebbe continues. An explanation of the 3 verses beginning L'chuna Ranana in a manner meaningful to everyone is as follows. Wednesday, we begin thinking, what will we have for Shabbos? This is a concern in a literal sense and also spiritually. How can we Shabbos? In other words, with what are we going to experience Shabbos? After all, every person is quite different on Shabbos than they are during the weekday. So we become despondent. What's the solution? L'chuna Ranana. Let's have faith. Let's have trust. Comes Thursday, it's closer to Shabbos. We still don't have anything. So the Ranana doesn't come so easily, and we realize we've got to do something about it. So what do? Thursday night, we stay up and we learn Chassidus, and we sense the depth of, for Hashem is great and he's a great king. In other words, we work hard in the limud Chassidus and the learning of Chassidus to understand the greatness, the gadlus haboire, the greatness of Hashem. And with this, a Jew can Shabbos. That's the teaching in Hayom Yom. Of course, with what we've explained in the class today, we'll understand this Hayom Yom much better. Because what does it mean? With what can a Jew Shabbos? Of course, the celebration and experience of Shabbos is not just the external of meals, dress, etc., but it's the internal, spiritual elevation that there is on Shabbos. The neshama yasera, in the sense that what's revealed within the soul of Shabbos is a gift of a deeper sensitivity and perception of the divine. When is that? That's only if a person's worked hard spiritually during the week. When a person has worked hard, and sometimes it comes Wednesday, and you're thinking already, what are you going to Shabbos with? What are you going to experience on Shabbos? And what have you worked in the weekday? And sometimes comes Thursday, and there's nothing there. Thursday night, you sit and learn Chassidus. What does that mean? That a person learns Chassidus and they drive into their Chachma, Bina, and Das, and Midas, and Machshava, Dibur, Maisa, thought, speech, and action. When they drive into themselves, Einoid Milvadai, and a deeper sensitivity to Hashem, and they generate a true love of Hashem, then on Shabbos, they will have that revelation of the neshama yasera, of the additional soul. So that is a deeper explanation of what neshama yasera is, and be'ezras Hashem, in next week's class, we'll be having a look further at the concept of Oneg Shabbos, of the delight that we have in Shabbos, both physically and also spiritually.